Sorry.
That's okay. I meant to ask you to do that, and I just kind of just swung right into things instead of doing that. Okay. So that's our first question, right? When you think of numbers, or do you think of any qualities associated with any particular numbers? The second question, which is kind of more from the Newtonian perspective, if you will, what do you conclude about God from the mathematical structure of the universe? Thinking in terms of, okay, we live in this universe that has these laws of motion. I'm setting aside how relativity changed that for the moment. Laws of motion, geometric forms, vibration frequencies of light and sound. So our universe is measurable and seemingly according to in ways that can be described in mathematics. So the question really is, when we look at things that way, what might you conclude about the nature of God? What kinds of conclusions would you draw? And the final question then, if we take the time to look at that, is just based on your own reading, thinking, feeling, experience. Do you think of God more as Leibniz did, as emanating divine sparks? People talk about we have a spark of divinity within us. Do you think of it in those terms? Or do you think of God more like Spinoza as being the whole universe itself? Okay, so that's a question where we get right down to the nitty gritty about ways that we think about God. But let's start with the thing about numbers. So when you think of numbers, do you think of any numbers that to you have a particular, I don't call it spiritual qualities? We can call them that. Yeah, Maya?
Huh?
Yes.
Well, 12.
Okay.
You don't want to. You want us to break down into smaller groups, or are we not enough people?
Well, how many people do we have right now?
We could do 2 groups.
We could do 2 groups, I guess. You want to do that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that then. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. And then do some breakout rooms here. Let's see. So we need 2 basically, right?
Yeah.
Create 2 breakout rooms. Boom. Yeah, okay, that'd be good. And so so you got the questions in mind. You can
There's Claire. No, Elise.
oh, someone else came?
Elise.
Okay. Well, we still can do 2 rooms, I think.
Yes.
1, 2, 3. Oh,
Ah, there is Claire.
wait a minute. Let me cancel this for a second. See how many people I have here to do this.
Can you keep the questions up even when we are in breakout rooms?
I don't know how to do that on this program. That would be handy. Well, let's see. I'll put them back up. 6 people, so we can do 3 groups now. I'll put just for a second. I'll put the questions back up, and so we can look at them. So remember what they are. So again, first numbers. Somebody said 12. Okay, yeah. So that would be a number to think about. What does that mean to you? So spiritually. The second one. What do you conclude about God from the mathematical nature of the universe? Simplest terms. And then why don't we just do those 2 questions for about 10 minutes, and we'll come back and sort of look at the last question, which is really just kind of a multiple choice, A or B kind of thing. Okay, although I might have you say a little bit more about it. So just those 2 questions. Divine qualities or spiritual qualities of number, and what do you conclude about God from the mathematical structure of the universe, laws of motion and that sort of thing. Okay, and we'll do that for about 10 minutes, I think, and then I may pop in just to make sure everybody's still clear about the questions. Okay, so I wish I could share the slide in your rooms, but I don't know how to do that, as I said. So I'm going to do 3 rooms. That gives 2 of you each have your chance to talk about it. So
Maybe
here we go.
you can copy paste the text of the slide in the chat.
Oh yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that. I'm gonna go ahead and put you in the
If
rooms
we're
though, but then
here.
I'll type it in the chat stream. You should be able to see it from there. Okay, ready? Here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go. Here we go. It takes a second for it to happen here. Let's see, broadcast message to all. Do that. Ah, okay. Okay. All right, so I sent the little message. I noticed there's a little bar that says broadcast message to all. So I put the two questions in there and broadcast the message to them. So I guess they're able to see it. I don't really know. Let's see. Maya, I'm gonna join each of the rooms just to make sure everybody got everything, and then I'll come back.
Yeah.
Okay, here I go.
Yeah.
I got into one breakout room. Now I'm going to go into a second one and just make
Okay.
sure everybody's on task here.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, here I go.
Yes.
I'm going into room 3. I went into room 2. Both the people in there are on phones, so they can't see the chat screen, but they seem to be on task on the discussing the number
Right.
thing. So I'm just going to check on group 3, and then I'll be back with you until we come back. I'll come back.
During the peak of
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I accidentally clicked the wrong button and left the meeting instead of leaving the breakout room. So
Oh, that's
that's
okay.
what happened to me. I kind of disappeared.
I was wondering, what about these four? I mean, you're speaking in July
Uh-huh.
and in August. What about making it a fourth Sunday on the four parables? Is that too hard on you? I don't want to make you, I don't want to, load up your existing schedule and
If-
preparation time and worry.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. 4 consecutive Sundays?
No, there would be the 4 Sundays that you're scheduled.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that would be fine.
And I sent you the ones that Nicole chose that she thought were particularly interesting to have an interpretation and understanding. I sent it to you. You got it in the mail. So
Okay.
you
Yeah,
know, that could be really a change for mysticism. Yeah.
yeah. No, I'd be glad to do that. I was definitely gonna do something completely different anyway, so this was just like a series, but yeah, I would be glad to do that. I'll do the ones that you sent me. Fine with me. I may introduce others as well if they're
Oh, yeah.
germane.
You do whatever, and also uh I really, well, I know you will do that anyway, to bring in the historical and anthropology to me is one of my fascinating sidelines, and to understand what people were really going through and where they were coming from and what was going on with Jesus and what was, just today I was hearing this guy say Jesus was just believing in a renaissance of the Jewish teaching. He wasn't starting a new religion, and anyway, yeah, okay, all right.
Everybody's an expert on Jesus,
Yeah.
sort of. Well, I probably get into that a little bit too when I'm talking about it, but can you make me a host again? Because I left the room, because I left the meeting accidentally, I'm not a host anymore. Yeah.
Oh,
I think I'll
I
bring
didn't get
people.
it, what you meant when you said you left the room. Okay,
Yeah, there were two choices and I picked the wrong one.
okay.
Leave the room or leave the meeting. And I accidentally clicked on leave the meeting. So I got kicked out and now I have to come back. I had to come back. So I'm going to,
You bring them back together?
yeah, I'm going to bring them back together and we'll see what we've got because I don't want to spend the whole time in the things. Okay. So in about 50 seconds or so, everybody will be back.
The last question is really, I think, very interesting to hear what people really think.
Yeah.
Because in unity, we got the spark of God, of divinity is
Yes.
in you. And then we go to the more mystical level where God is, it's not pantheism, it's panentheism, God in every, I don't think people are that clear, so it would be nice to have a discussion on the third one. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that. If I have, and then my second discussion I was going to do is related, so we can just kind of flow from there. I think that'd be good. All breakout rooms will close in 4,
going to the-
3, 2, 1.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, everybody's back. Great. Just click this here. So, I'm gonna close this. So first, somebody tell me a number you came up with that you came up with a meaning for, if you in fact came up with one. I heard you all talking about numbers, but not being quite sure what they meant. So
Yeah.
anything that you got from derived from that.
Well, Tani had a very interesting take on zero, and maybe she should.
Oh, yeah, I'd like to hear that.
Okay.
Yeah, because that was fabulous what you were saying about.
Okay.
Okay.
But this is not my idea. Actually, I borrow from the Mahayanist Buddhists. One of their most famous philosophers says that God is the creative principle. So God is absolute and unconditioned. All other things are interconnected. So because of that, we cannot really hold on to anything as absolute, because they are relative. All things in this world is relative. Even doctrines, philosophies, they come and go. So they take a zero position to these things. They might be helpful in a certain way or in a certain time, but we have to be not too attached to them. It's not my idea. I'm just borrowing from Nagarjuna, who was a famous Mahayanist philosopher.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Yeah, there's a lot of in mysticism, whether you're talking about, if you think of it as Buddhist mysticism or any other, the idea that the number zero is associated with, or the idea of emptiness is associated with the divine. That God not being a thing, in a sense, God is no thing. We can't really think of God as a thing. So zero, emptiness, and also in Buddhism, form is empty, because as she was saying, the things are temporary, relative, transient, and so they aren't really anything permanent at all. And so, in a sense, the universe is nothing, God is nothing, depending on how you look at it, right? It's a little bit relative, but what's interesting to me is that the number, and you picked up on this, the number zero is associated or the idea of emptiness, associated with the Tao, and also with various sort of mystical ideas. So that's a good one. Thanks for that. Yeah. Any people don't ordinarily think of that one. So I'm impressed you got that one. What else? You get other numbers that you like? I know I heard you. Somebody said 12, and I think somebody said 7. So did you derive any sort of sense of the meaning of those numbers from that, or just sort of observations that they're sort of there in sacred literature?
The universality is that many cultures, if not most, do assign meaning to certain numbers, but not to the same ones.
Yeah. That's very true. Yeah, the number 7's an interesting one because, the numbers, before telescopes, people could see moving in the sky, celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, and 5 planets. So 7 became kind of the number of heaven, in effect. And you even see it in the creation story in Genesis, right? God's day is the 7th day.
Yes.
God just sort of looks at everything and says, it's good. 2 thumbs up. That's not what it says, but you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So God rests, right? So God is at rest in the seventh heaven, I say. So that's an interesting, yeah. And okay, I'm going to do a little tiny bit of math here, although I should probably have, who was it? Elise is the mathematician here. Elise, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I want to just share some complicated numbers that I like a lot. And it's called Euler's formula. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but when Euler found out about this formula, he called it the God formula, because it's a formula that used 5 numbers. And they are the 5 basic numbers of mathematics. That is 0, that represent a void. 1, there's pi, that works with circles and sounds and vibrations. There's E, that is behind all phenomena of growth in the universe. And there's I, which is a complicated number that is used a lot in physics. And these 5 numbers coexist in the same formula. So they are united in one formula. And that is really many mathematicians are the first time they saw this formula, and it's so incredible. So I wanted to share about it. It's like all these.
So are those numbers? Let's see. So pi is a number that you cannot definitely calculate, right?
Exactly.
As an indefinite calculation. Is E the same kind of a number?
Yeah, E is the same kind of number.
And I is the same kind of number? Or is that
No,
different?
I is it's called a complex number. I won't get into that, but it's a number that is used in physics.
Okay.
And there's 1 and there's 0, and all these numbers coexist.
Right. So that's, wow, that's really cool. You guys got into like the heavy duty numbers there.
Yeah.
I love that.
I missed it.
Yeah.
Well, the 12, of course, we have the 12 horoscope, the 12 signs and the,
Right. The 12 constellations.
that's right. And we got the 12 apostles, right? And so there is something in our Judeo-Christian tradition that keeps playing with that number, I think.
Yeah.
What
Well,
do you know about it?
They used to measure time in terms of the full, all the phases of the moon. And in a single year, there's roughly 12 of those. It's not exact, but that's how they used to measure time. And so that had something, and the sun moving through the constellations, the 12 constellations, they picked those out. So it's kind of a way of measuring the circle of the year. Because when they, people originally didn't think of time as a kind of straight line or a curve or whatever, the way we do now from past, present, future. They thought of it as, a circle of seasons. And so the number 12 is also a heavenly number. So you think of the planets move through the 12, the 7 heavenly bodies move through the 12 constellations, hence 7 and 12 are both divine numbers. The ancients thought of each one of the heavenly bodies as having its own sphere that it traveled through, its own spiritual realm, if you will. So that's like really, so that goes back. You see it in Egypt, you see it in Persia, you see it in China. The same sort of this way and Native Americans. I used to live up the hill from the Cahokia Mounds, which was Indian Native American site in near St. Louis.
Yeah.
You familiar with that, Rosemary?
I said, yeah, Illinois. I used to live in St. Louis too.
Yeah, I literally lived up the hill from it. All I do is travel on the street in front of my house, and there I was at the Cahokia Mounds. Okay, well, anyway, they used that for. There's also signs that they used. The reason I brought it up is they measured the year too using something very much like Stonehenge, but instead of stones arranged in a circle, they had what they were post holes, and they would put like timber in there, and of course the shadows. These are the shadows of the circle. Presumably that's what they used it for. That's a hypothesis rather than a. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, we need to go. Yeah.
We need to go and not leave the meeting, but to go on to the next next topic, which was, and let's just kind of talk about either one of the other two questions. I'll put them back up again just to make it, so I don't have to keep repeating what they are here. I'll just do a share. Boom. Let's see, and then I have to find the questions. Here we go. Here we go. So the second question was about what do you conclude from this, the mathematics of the universe, if you will, about the nature of God. And then the other one is, based on sort of the way you think about God, or how you feel about God, do you think of God more as a spark, as sparks in, or emanating sparks into creation as Leibniz did, or do you think about God as sort of the universe itself, as Spinoza did, something like that? So either one of those questions, we'll just play with them for a while. Rosemary?
Okay, so basically the second question.
Okay.
Since everything can be described numerically, numbers are a language and they can describe anything that exists. And so that tells us about God, about intelligence, about creation, that it is essentially orderly.
Yes, good.
Yes.
Really good point. So the divine order is reflected in the mathematical qualities of the universe, if you will, and numbers, right? So it's not just about form, which is what the laws of physics are about, but also those numbers we were talking about, right? The qualities that we perceive in the different numbers. Oh, I was going to say a thing about, and as I said, I could have a mathematician to speak more to this, but one of the things about 7 is that it's the only number in the first 9 that you cannot precisely calculate the angles for its polygon. So in other words, like a square is 90 degrees, or a rectangle is 90 degrees in the corners, right? And so on. You can calculate it for 3, 4, 5, 6-sided figures, 8-sided figures, 9-sided figures, but not the 7. It can't be precisely calculated. You can't make one exactly with a compass and a straight edge in geometry. So it's a mystical number. And it's also got its fraction, like 1/7 is like one of those numbers where it's kind of like pi, the numbers just keep going on and on forever. You can never actually precisely calculate 1/7. So you have to estimate it like you do with pi. So that's another sort of weird thing about the number 7. Okay, sorry, I got way off topic here. So what else do y'all have to say about these other questions?
The other thing that I was going to say in response to the first question, but it also works in response to the second question, is that the binary system, 0 or 1, as choice factors, can also describe everything. And so duality is an essential spiritual question.
Good. Yes, duality is necessary for creation.
Yes.
In effect, to make any kind of form, you need duality, or at least, you need, everything has poles, I guess. Yeah, so everything that we're doing right now, everything that we're seeing and hearing is a result of 0 and 1 in computer programming, right?
Which is totally mind-boggling.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. What else? Other thoughts? I can't see everybody's all at once, so
About
just
the others. Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
I have an interesting quote from Deepak Chopra.
Okay.
He's quoting Stephen Hawking's interview by Larry King, and the conclusion is God is the ultimate mathematician. I love it.
Yes, Pythagoras would agree, as would a number of other philosophers, actually. Yeah, and physicists. That's what actually Plato is supposed to have said. That God is a geometrician, I think, is what he said, something like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that all that signifies sort of a intricately detailed mathematical structure of the universe, and an infinite mathematical mind, if you will. So, and order everywhere, even if we can't always see it, one might hypothesize, right? Okay. So what else? What about the sparks and universe question, if you don't have anything else on numbers?
Do you have to have an either or?
That's a good
Yeah,
question. What do you think?
No.
Okay.
No,
So both and somehow,
Right.
yeah.
right? Yeah. Why not? There's paradoxes in mysticism. There's paradox in math. So why not? So that's that. Yeah. I mean, I'll be completely honest. I've never thought of it that way myself, as being both at the same time, because I'm too right-brained for that, or left-brained. But for that to occur to me, but that's an interesting point. What about the rest of you? You think both, or do you think either or?
I think both.
Yeah, what, Wilma?
I think it's both.
Sparks, both sparks and the universe as a whole.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you see,
So-
that's where I think unity folks are capable after years in this metaphysical stream of unity's teaching. They just wrap their arms around both. On one hand, we have the spark in us, right? But then also we somehow teach oneness, right? And so I think unity folks are most likely going to not want to choose one over the other.
Well, isn't it like the drop of water and the ocean that have the same properties? The drop of water is part of the ocean, but the drop of water has the same properties as the ocean of water.
Right, or a drop of water or a wave of the ocean, same thing,
Yes.
Right, right.
So that gets into the whole, are things ultimately particles or waves? To which physics answers yes. Both, either, depending on how you look at it. So maybe that's sort of the, you know, Leibniz and Spinoza started from different places in thinking about the nature of ultimate substance, and consequently they arrived at different conclusions, but maybe they were just both right from a different perspective. Then we get sort of relativity thinking, right? It's what was it? That was the thing Einstein said. What, you know, the people are traveling at different speeds, which time is correct? And it's both of them. It's both, but it just depends on what your perspective is. Neither one of them. Yeah. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
I think if we're talking about the infinite, it should confuse us just a little bit. I think it'd be kind of arrogant not to be a little bit confused by the infinite.
Yeah.
So, or at least see it as paradox. Okay. Let's see. How are we doing on time? I can't. When I have my thing up.
6 minutes.
You're 5 minutes to the hour.
Oh, okay. Cool. So good. Well, I won't go into the next topic, and I won't be concerned if I complete everything that I could talk about in this course. It's not necessary to do that. So we'll just hold off on the next. Actually, hold on for just a second. I want to check something because I want to see if we can talk about. Yeah. Okay. I think we could sort of look ahead to this a little bit. So sorry. I'm just looking. I was looking at my slides because I had a second discussion that I was going to do, but I really need to sort of introduce a few points to do that. So I'll just sort of in a general way introduce them, sort of what's coming up next, okay, kind of thing, and then that gives you a sense of where we are. So right now, we've sort of reached a point in history where you've got, you've got philosophers who are sort of Platonists in a way, certainly Pythagoreans, because now they're getting more and more thinking about the universe mathematically in this period, right? As we've sort of been doing, okay. And so, what happens next is sort of rooted in Descartes' little process of thinking about, thinking about what is reality. So what can I know with certainty? And he realized he could doubt, at least in his thought process, he could doubt everything that he thought of as being his knowledge. He could doubt the truth of anything except I think, therefore I am. In the process of thinking that way, Descartes raised a problem, in effect, right? He thought he had answered it, but other people were not completely satisfied with that. But the problem he brought up was just that we cannot tell if there's anything external to our minds that corresponds to what we call our sense impressions, what we perceive. Because we know that, for example, when we dream, the same thing happens, right? You dream, you hear, you see, you feel, you have emotions, you make decisions, the same kinds of things. Then you wake up and, oh, okay, that was all a dream. But now how different is it really? You're still seeing, feeling, thinking, making choices. It's more orderly. You know, it seems to last longer. The daylight seems to last longer than your dreams, obviously. But beyond that, the perceptions are the same. Right? So how do we know that there's, you know, how do we know, or why do we believe that there's something external to our perceptions of the world, our mental perceptions? This is a question that comes up, and this is the thing that philosophers struggle with for the next century, because as you'll see, one of the philosophers said, well, there's no reason whatsoever to infer that there's a material universe, because all we ever know are our ideas. He called our perceptions ideas and our thinking ideas, and that's all we experience, and there's no reason to infer that there's anything different from that or other than that, right? So one philosopher came down there, another philosopher said, wait a minute, that, you know, we can make a distinction. And so they struggled with it, and basically at the end of that struggle, they haven't really disproven that position, but they've used it to try to make sense out of what we perceive. So it's an interesting thing that got brought up in this next period, where the strongest argument seems to be for idealism, that the world in a shorthand, the world consists of mind, that all there is mind, that matter is just an idea in mind, right? Your body is just an idea in your mind, so on and so forth. Not just, but that's what it is, right? That's the reality of it. And so it kind of ends up there. The other philosophers that struggle against it basically say, well, we can't really know that there's an external world, but there's still good reasons for inferring that there is, right? So that's kind of where they came down. We can't really know what it is, they say, but you know, it's there. It's you know, there's reason to think it is. So that's kind of what we're going to next week. And I think that's an especially interesting period for us in Unity, because our metaphysics is a metaphysics of mind. The mind's sort of the ultimate reality. Well, this is sort of the, I want to say, the philosophical, historical background of that way of thinking about, and that way of understanding or theorizing the nature of the universe, right? Because we're talking about a period that's about 100 years before New Thought, right? So, and there is actually historically there's a direct impact. So we're going to look at what those philosophers were saying, and if we have time, I'll slide a little bit into the 19th and 20th century if we have time next week. But I also want to do some discussion. So what I'm going to do is I'll tell you about that little philosophical scuffle, who was involved in it, that sort of thing, and then we'll sort of address the question and say, well, which of these, you know, has somebody here made a really good point, or are we sort of still a little bit in the dark, or whatever? So that's the kind of thing we'll get into. And in between now and then, if you want to get philosophical about it, you could think about what reasons do I have for believing there's an external world? If my thoughts affect the world, then is that, you know, evidence for the idea that the universe is mind? If my thoughts affect my experience, is that evidence for it? Right? Because that's one of the things we hold. None of these philosophers held that, by the way. It never occurred to them to go from the idea that everything's mind to, and we can affect, therefore we can affect our world at the level of thought. It didn't occur to these guys. That's where New Thought comes in. That's sort of a practical application of the metaphysics. But between now, like I said, between now and next week, you kind of reflect on that. Maybe you will solve the problem if you think about it. Solve the problem of the external world and its existence. There's a related problem: is how do we know there are other minds? So that gets into, we know, how do I know, for example, that I'm not just projecting all of you, that you're just ideas in my mind and you don't exist, right? I will continue to act as if you do exist, right?
Thank you.
And I have that there are other minds, and I actually do have reasons for believing that as well. But practically speaking, it seems to work out better to take it for granted that when you encounter other human beings that seem to have minds, they do in fact have minds, right? But which gets into the question of what do we do when robots become so lifelike? Should we, that they could do, if they could do everything humans can do, shall we then say that they're alive and they have consciousness and we ought to treat them as fellow conscious beings? That's a little bit of science fiction-y stuff for the future. You don't have to think about that, but
That's a very interesting
all sort
question.
of related, right? Okay. I guess that's enough chattering by me for a while. Do you guys have any closing comments or thoughts? Or
I was wondering if Elise would write down those 5. Is that a lot of work for you? I don't want to give you work to do. Would you send it to
Yeah.
us in an email, the 5?
Yes, I can send you the formula and you can share it with everyone else.
hey, would you mind, Elise, as long as we're putting you to work, would you mind putting the link to the fractal thing in the chat for anybody who wants
Okay,
to?
yeah.
If you know how to do copy and paste, y'all, you can copy the link that she has there and then paste it onto, you know, a document of some kind. And then you can just click on the link and go see this thing about mathematics. I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to copy, control copy, control C. Now I got it. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Elise. We appreciate your extra research for us this topic. Tanny, did you have something you want to say?
Me?
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
well, for me, really, I'm a very practical woman. I actually do not like to speculate about the universe or everything. I follow the Buddha's advice. If you are sick, take the medicine and don't worry about what's inside.
Yes, Buddha would hate this class. I grant you that. Buddha would consider this class a waste of time, but
No, but it's interesting to me. Like, it's a good summary, and you have done a really good job.
thank you. Thanks. I like the Buddha too. He just doesn't fit into this particular topic. But
Or this particular way of looking at things.
That's weird because to me, Buddhism is full of numbers.
well, there actually are some Western philosophers that have sort of a Buddha-like, end up in a Buddha-like position. So
Yeah, it's like,
we haven't
who's
gotten to
the
them, but
author?
was it Schopenhauer and some others of that ilk? But I'm not going to. There's too much. I'm trying to narrow the field a bit. So I love thinking about this, reading about this stuff, thinking about it, and so thank you for joining me. For it's a privilege and a delight for me to be able to talk to others who have at least some interest in these ideas. So
We do.
Yes.
So we thank you.
We thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
okay, well I guess we're done. You could probably stop the recording.
Okay.
Yeah, and I will see you all next week for our last session in this particular journey.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
wonderful.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody. I'm leaving.
Bye.
Whoops.
Bye-bye.